All right, man, peace. So, former superstar linebacker slash defensive end for the Pittsburgh Steelers, James Harrison, made an appearance on the Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman show. And he pretty much just corroborated many of the sentiments that I've put forth pertaining to the Pittsburgh Steelers' current head coach, Mike Tomlin. That being that there's no doubt that Mike Tomlin is a very good head coach. But there's a difference between a good head coach and a championship-level head coach. And I'm just not quite sure if Mike Tomlin is that superstar, Super Bowl-level head coach who's going to be able to defeat a Bill Belichick because he's not quite disciplined enough. And James Harrison himself, who has experience dealing with both coaches, he's going to corroborate what I've been saying. So they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
He brings a level of toughness.
Nasty defense.
He's in trouble. He's hit. And down he goes. Flushed out of the pocket. And he's hit. And sacked by James Harrison. He's hit. He is sacked. Delayed blitz. He's hit and sacked.
God damn. This nigga put a taxi on a sled and pushing a damn sled. Shit.
Get your weight up. Joining us now is a two-time Super Bowl champ, James Harrison. He played 15 seasons, 84 sacks, 573 tackles, 5 Pro Bowl selections. Thank you so much for being here with us.
By the way, first thing, how many plates did you have on there? I couldn't even count.
I don't know. I think it was like close to 800, something like that. 7 something.
Maniac.
Yeah.
The whole rack. I got to ask you this. So former Steelers quarterback Terry Bradshaw recently said Mike Tomlin is too much of a player's coach. And I know you had said he's a good coach, could be a little more disciplined. I asked him about that yesterday on the show. I want to play it for you.
Well, before they play the Mike Tomlin sound, let me say this. I partially agree with Terry Bradshaw, but we also have to understand that Terry Bradshaw is a fully invested and engrafted member of the Pittsburgh Steelers family. He's a major part of their lore. So, of course, he's going to compare Mike Tomlin to the coach that he had, Chuck Noll, who was on the Paul Brown coaching tree. And beyond that, Terry Bradshaw knows what he sees when he watches the Pittsburgh Steelers. He knows that with that roster, they are underperforming, they are underachieving. So that's one of the main reasons why Terry Bradshaw has been kind of hard on Mike Tomlin the last couple of years. Because he sees the end of the road coming for Ben Roethlisberger. He also sees that they have the best wide receiver in the NFL, arguably the best running back in the NFL. There's no way in the world that they should not have made more Super Bowl appearances at the very least.
James has an opinion. Whether it's accurate or inaccurate, it's accurate from his perspective, and I respect it on that level. I'm not going to stay up at night worrying about his perspective, to be quite honest with you. I'm focused on specifically the guys we coach and how we're getting these guys ready to play this weekend in Cleveland. You guys could spend a lot of time digesting and talking about James's opinion on a lot of subjects. It could be a TV show.
In other words, to make a long story short, I don't coach that thick neck Negro anymore. So I don't give a damn what he's talking about.
James, I think it's interesting coming from you because you played for 2 elite franchises and being the Steelers and the Patriots. What was the biggest difference from playing under a Tomlin versus a Belichick?
Like I said, it's discipline. Everybody think I'm talking about, the players are just running wild. They're doing whatever they want to do. It's discipline as far as an understanding of defenses, the execution of them, even with the players, understanding, and it's being taught the same way by everybody else. It's not.
Let me say this. What he's stating is very, very frustrating for any of us who have worked in corporate America, and you have to adhere to the chain of command. When you have more than one manager or what have you that you have to report to, and they're all supposed to be on the same page, but they're giving you a different message, that can lower the morale of the people who are working under them. So it's very important that when you're in a quote-unquote managerial position or a directorial position, and you're expected to be able to communicate with transparency what you want your subordinates to accomplish, that all the directors, the managers are on the same page. In the sports world, the coaches have to be on the same page, communicating the same message, because that is going to lower morale if you're going to multiple coaches to try to ascertain what the game plan is and they're all telling you different things. And beyond that, there's a little doubt in my mind that Mike Tomlin has a severe problem with making sure that his team is disciplined, because we see how they've responded to the Le'Veon Bell situation. Everybody's running off at the mouth. And You just can't have that if you have Super Bowl aspirations.
I'm not saying that the team is going crazy. They're doing whatever they want to do. That's what I'm saying. That's the big difference that I felt when I went over to New England.
Well, the reason why it's such a relevant subject is because Terry Bradshaw, obviously working for Fox, doing a great job for them for years, 4-time Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He did an interview a couple of days ago, and he spoke out about Tomlin. And he said that he wasn't a fan, and that his coaching style, he's more interested in being friends with the players than doing anything else. My attitude.
I'm not quite sure if Mike Tomlin is concerned with being friends with the players per se, quote unquote. I think that he thinks he's one of the players. And that's one of the main problems. If one can utilize that sentiment to say he wants to be friends with the players, I'm not quite sure. I honestly think that Mike Tomlin thinks that he's one of the players. I think that he's a little bit too interested in the fraternity aspect of being an NFL player. And I think that he still maybe harkens back to the days where he either played or wished that he could play. And I think that that is holding him back to a certain degree in understanding how important his role is as being a guide to his troops, because there's no doubt that they're not as buttoned up as they need to be. They definitely need to be more buttoned up.
Attitude is simple. Tomlin has won 16 and 60 as a head coach. He's been to 3 AFC championship games, 2 Super Bowls, won a Super Bowl title, 8 playoff appearances in his 11 years as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think that's much to complain about other than to say he's not Bill Belichick. But when you hear a Bradshaw saying what he said, what do you take from that?
Once again, Stephen A. Smith, I think that it's rather glaring that the Pittsburgh Steelers have so much talent on their roster, and they really have not even come close to beating the Steelers in the last however many so years. That's the problem. It would be one thing if their rosters were equivalent in talent and he was just getting outcoached by Belichick. But the Pittsburgh Steelers probably have twice the amount of talent as the New England Patriots, and he's still getting grossly outcoached. That means that there's a huge gulf there. And in times of adversity, in crucial moments, you can't trust him to make the right call.
Like I said, everyone's entitled to their opinion. You got to look at the type of coach that he played under versus versus what he's seeing now.
Right.
I would say that Cowher was another coach that was probably right under Belichick. You know what I'm saying? So after that, you got Coach Tomlin. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I'm just you asked me a question. Who do you think is better? And that was my opinion. As far as what Bradshaw is saying, that's his opinion. He's entitled to it.
Because there's this. It seems to me there's a feeling that Tomlin is a player's coach, and that what Bradshaw's getting at, and the way I think, at least the way I interpreted what you were saying when I first read it, was you can't really be that way. You have to be the authority figure. But what you just said now was you're talking about discipline in terms of assignments on the field?
Yeah.
Can you get into that a little more? What does that mean?
Just a greater understanding and it being taught in the same way and it not being changed. Like if one technique is a technique, that's the technique that it is, and this is the way you do it. You can't have it changed or tweaked a little bit here and there.
So you're saying that Bill Belichick has a more disciplined football mind and he imparts that on his staff and the players?
Yes.
Okay.
When I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, I see a team, and everybody comes down to Brady versus Big Ben, Belichick versus Tomlin. When you see the Pittsburgh Steelers, what's holding them up from capturing the Super Bowl championship with the talent that they have assembled?
Stephen A. Smith, he already answered that question. If they have that far a greater amount of talent than the New England Patriots, and they still are falling short, who do you point the finger at? I know that it's going to hurt your feelings because you're a fan of Mike Tomlin, but it's very obvious that the question has already been answered.
What's been
like you said, they have the talent. The offense is probably the best offense that they've had around. They've probably been the best offense the last 3-4 years,
And let me say this, in professional sports, you just have those errors where you have very good coaches and they just cannot overcome a great coach. Like in basketball back in the 90s, you had coaches like Rick Adelman and George Karl and Jerry Sloan, who were very good to borderline great coaches, but they just could not defeat Phil Jackson. And of course, he had the great Michael Jordan, he had Scottie Pippen, he had Dennis Rodman that he was coaching. But still, Phil Jackson was the difference in the Bulls being able to defeat those other teams. That's why Michael Jordan stated that he was going to retire if they did not bring back Phil Jackson. Once again, there's a difference between a championship level coach and a very good coach.
no question about it. I think the defense needs to hold up, their end of the bargain. And the biggest thing with the defense, I think, is the run defense. That's something that had been an issue, all year. Actually,
You think it's the run defense? You don't think it's that daggone secondary that I've been complaining about for years?
The reason why he's saying it's the run defense is because James Harrison used to play on the defensive line / linebacker. So that was another way for him to say that the linebacker coaches, the defensive coordinators, and Mike Tomlin were not doing the job up to what his standards are, that a good coach should be able to make sure that all of the defensive players understood their assignments. That's what he's saying. He's really not qualified to speak on the secondary, so he's not going to fully address the secondary coach. He played on the defensive line, so he's going to speak from that standpoint.
You can complain about the secondary, but the numbers show that they doing all right. I mean, you're not nowhere near the bottom. You're actually they're closer to middle of the top. So you got to shore up the run defense.
Guys, we're going to take a quick break.
Sure.
James.
But anyway, that's basically it on that, because after this segment, they took James Harrison into another direction. I just wanted to cover the portion of the interview where James Harrison addressed the Mike Tomlin dynamic. So anyway, peace.